Hey, Welcom World Entertainment, and when you read a headline that says New James Bond game 007 First Light promises modern values and claims old school Bond would be tone deaf today, doesn't exactly raise your excitement for the game. Now, the game has already been delayed by 2 months. We know that. It's been pushed all the way up to, I think it's May, or else it's been pushed from May up into July. But either way, it's been delayed for 2 months. But yeah, they're just showing us, quite frankly, that they don't understand the character. And to say the old school Bond, i.e. James Bond, would be tone deaf today, why? Explain why, when the character has endured for over 60 years, for a reason. People love the character, and the character all the way up to even the Pierce Brosnan era stayed the same character. The world around him changed, but he stayed the same character he always was, until the Daniel Craig era, and then we start getting the mopey, I'm almost an angsty teenager version of James Bond, where he was just always down in the dumps and pining over Vespa. But let's dive into this, because this is how you kill a game before it even comes out. Like, it's one thing that you showed gameplay and people were like, yeah, it's not very impressive. It's one thing to show your take on James Bond in terms of how the character will look and stuff, and people are like, okay, he's a bit young, but okay. It's another when you turn around and go, yeah, old Bond that you know and love, yeah, we're not doing that. We're doing a modern day Bond. It's just everything wrong with today. So it says the upcoming 007 First Light was ranked among the most anticipated games of 2026. Was it? Okay. However, recent remarks from IO Interactive have raised concerns that the final product will be James Bond in name only. So this is what the cinematic director, Martin Imborg, told Monster Vine. We reflect modern values, so it's not going to be your old school Bond. Right there, you've just killed the game. You don't even have to say anything else, because right there, you've killed the game. Reflect modern values, not your old school Bond. So in other words, it's not James Bond, as this article says. It's Bond in name only, and he's gonna what? What are modern values at this stage? Is it gonna be James Bond 007 License to Kill, providing he has permission first? Is that what we're talking about here? So fans of the Bond character have followed the iconic spy for decades, as he originally was. The womanizing, globe-trotting, cold-blooded killer who remained cool under pressure was never designed to be a role model. But he never failed to be interesting, in large part because he always ran counter to civilized society, suggesting that an old-school Bond would be tone-deaf in this day, and granting permission to modernize him may instead provide a license to kill interest. Yes, probably that it would be exactly what it does. And again, you even see how this article is reflecting the fact that this version, or the old school version of James Bond, has endured for all these years. He is the character that people love. He is the character that we all wanted to go and see. We watched the movies, we bought the books, we played the games, we got the collectibles. All that stuff was because of who the character was and should always be. He's a spy, first and foremost. That's what he is. He's not meant to be this lovable guy that you could sit down and have a drink with anytime and think, oh yeah, he's just a cool guy, you know? Yeah, he's cool to watch and stuff, but realistically, he's there doing his job. Yeah, know what I mean? He's not meant to be your everyday Joe Soap. He's not meant to be the guy who can come in and just sit down in a restaurant and have a dinner with anybody and pay the bill and leave and go home and watch TV. No, he's usually there for a reason, and it's usually to take someone out or to get as much information, because he's a spy. Whether that means he has to seduce women, whether he's globetrotting, all this, that's what he does. Same with a femme fatale. She uses her sexuality to gain men's trust, to gain information and stuff like that. But they're forgetting about that nowadays as well. So, Borg mentioned that Bond has evolved through the decades. Well, likely no one could disagree that the Bond in the novels is as unique as the different portrayals of the various actors who brought him to life in the movies. The character has generally remained the same. Now, there are slight differences. There's no real kind of jokes in the books, but the movies obviously had more fun with the character. Of course, in the books, the character had the scar. In the movies, he didn't have the scar. And that was for aesthetic reasons. They didn't put the scar on him because they were like, we don't want the actor to be walking around with a scar on his face. You know, we want him to look basically normal, to fit in almost. So that's the parts that they're talking about where the differences are. It's not the case of, well, in the book he drank, Heineken as he does now in the Daniel Craig thing, whereas everything else it's the vodka martini shaken not stirred, which of course the Daniel Craig one I think only ever ordered once, and he still I don't think ever said the actual line of vodka martini shaken not stirred. But the world around the character changes, the character doesn't change. That's the biggest difference here. So then it says, as film critic Christian Tutu noted in the lead up to 2021's No Time to Die, he wrote this: one reason Bond endures, both as a franchise and pop culture institution, is that he hasn't changed dramatically in the times. He added, Bond has built a core following since 1962. Why would any film studio, actress or marketeer try to distance itself from that fan base if not insult it directly? And that is the other thing we keep seeing. Phoebe Waller-Bridge coming in saying, we got to make James Bond for the Me Too era and stuff like that. And it's really this, Bond can't be Bond anymore. He can't be the womanizer. He can't be the guy that every guy wants to be and every woman wants to be with. He needs to be respectable and all this and a real clean guy. And it's just stupid. So it continues saying, that question is just as relevant now for 007 First Light as it was for the last film over 5 years ago, suggesting that the core audience should be ashamed of itself for enjoying the character as he originally presented for decades is unlikely to change minds. Modern values are effervescent. Bond, through all his iterations, has traditionally remained unchanged. And that is the thing. That's what I was talking about, how the character stayed the same. The world around him changed, but the character remained the character that Ian Fleming wrote. And then Grums tweeted this out, and he hits the nail on the head with this, saying, Bond game is dead. Some game devs have learned nothing. If you made old school Bond, it would stand out so much you would print money. But no, you have to reflect modern values for an audience that doesn't exist. And that is one of the things here. The article even says the audience that both wants to play Bond in a video game and holds the modern values arguably does not exist. And that is the thing. Who are you making this for? Are you making it for the audience who screams and yells on Twitter about it's got to reflect today's world and modern values and blah blah blah, but don't actually buy or play your games, go see your movies, read your comic books, read your normal books, anything like that? Or do you make it for the actual fan base that has made this series last for over 60 years? That's the biggest question. And they always seem to answer it by saying, oh, it's the first one. It's give it to the people who don't actually buy our shit. And then when it comes out and it fails and no one buys it and its streaming numbers tank and nobody's playing it concurrently and all stuff like that, what do? Do they blame the people that they said, oh, they're the modern audience, we made it for them? No, they blame us. So at the end of the day, this game is probably a good indication for what Amazon is going to do with the movies. They're going to make a modern Bond for a modern audience, which means it's going to be James Bond in name and name only, and not reflect the true guy we've known loved and followed for over 60 years. But what do you guys think? Do you think this has just absolutely destroyed this game's chances? Or do you think we're reading too much into it? Let me know what your thoughts are. And with that, I shall leave it there for this one. So do like, share, subscribe, hit that hype button, let YouTube know these videos are worth checking out and all that good stuff. Cheers, and I'll catch you in the next one.